So this is our video showing how we lifted a porch concrete slab. YouTube has lots of different videos on how to do this. You know, you can call a professional that comes out and either mud jacks or uses polyurethane foam to lift it. This particular porch was down, the sidewalk was down, a little portion of the driveway was down. We were only able to get one person to even show up to even give an estimate. It's $3,800, and the contract was a little eerie for me to look at just because it seemed shady about, you know, they were shirking off all the responsibility, and if they used any more than X amount of pounds of polyurethane foam, it'd be, you know, this cost per pound, and you know, $3,800 just to begin with. And they said, of course, you know, that's lifting the slab 2 inches in this case. So this shows another portion where the slab is down maybe a couple inches or an inch and a half, and it's just a better picture of it. I'd like to show you the finished product now so you can see that we've got it pretty well flush at this end. Down here at this other end, it wasn't 100% flush, but it was because the actual brick that went up, there was mortar at the bottom that was kind of limiting how high it could go. And also, I think the rebar might have limited how far we could actually lift it. So we didn't mud jack it. We didn't use any type of foam to do the lifting. We used hydraulic jacks. So first of all, you can say, okay, what kind of bits did you use? I already had this bit on the right. I had used it on my own house to get through a basement wall to mitigate some radon. And then we purchased this. This bit was 3.75. It's just 3 3/4 inch. This bit we purchased off Amazon, just a very economical bit. That's a 6-inch bit, primarily to be able to get a floor jack down through the actual floor. So we made probably 4 or 5 holes in this concrete, and that was probably the most difficult part of it. And obviously we didn't have the best bit, probably didn't have the heaviest hammer, and so as a result, some of the actual holes, we just drilled a whole bunch of holes around it. And then eventually we also jackhammered those holes just so we'd have a spot to get through. So after the holes were made, we would place brick down through the center of them for us to actually place our bottle jacks on. Now, I'll tell you, first of all, I'll see if I can give a link to this other YouTube video that gave me the idea to do this. And of course, he says, do not get your hands in between the slab and underneath the slab, because, you know, if this thing falls, you're in deep trouble. So anyways, you have to try to get the brick, or whatever it is you're using as a base, quite wide. We had a brick standing up at one point, and all we were doing was just pile driving it. As we were jacking, we just pushed the brick farther and farther down into the dirt. So you have to have a wider footprint on the bottom. You can see these are the anchors that we use. We just got them at Home Depot, and I went and chose to only use a 3/8 bolt. I thought, man, that's awfully small. I sure hope it works. I've looked at some of the math and I tried to estimate, but I thought, okay, I'm just going to give it a shot. And so we drilled 1/2-inch holes, use a hammer to punch them all the way down, and then after you punch them all the way down, you use this setting tool. The setting tool spreads it for you to then have this anchor, and then of course the bolt helps spread it as well. But you first hit them all the way down flush, and then the setting tool will help spread the actual anchor. And we did not drill the hole all the way through. We drilled it partially down so that it would bottom out, I guess. So here's an example of one of the holes that we had cored out the actual slab. You can see working more on it there. Okay, so here's one of the jacks that we used. This is a 6-ton jack, and you can see that after we've gotten this lifted quite a ways up, now you don't even have access to the valve to release the tension on the jack. So that wasn't very easy. Find a pair of pliers and be able to latch on to the release mechanism to release the jack. So that was a challenge. Right now you can still see that the slab is still down. This is one of the braces that we used. The video I'll try to give a link to on the other YouTube. They just use timbers, and I think that's fine. I had these tubing, 2 pieces of tubing, had some decent thickness to them, and they seemed like they were just about the right length, and so I just went ahead and used those in this particular case. So there's the Harbor Freight jackhammer that I used to get through some of these holes. I had previously used this when I worked on the radon mitigation problem that I had to mitigate as well. So this shows both jacks that were used to actually lift the concrete slab. I think it's about 65 square feet. I was estimating that the slab is about 4 inches thick. We tried to do the math. We thought it was about 3,800 pounds of concrete. This is only a 2-ton jack. The other one's a 6-ton. And honestly, this jack was low on oil, so I'd fill it up with oil before we can even get out of the gate. So after we got this lifted, now the process is, okay, wow, this did not break. We did run into rebar, by the way, and so it's like, okay, you have to contend with rebar. And we think rebar limited just how high we could actually lift the concrete. So after we have this lifted, now it's like, okay, what's going to support it? And you'll find some people out there when they're lifting some slabs, if they're just down a little bit, will use some concrete leveling solution. And so we went ahead and bought 6 bags of that. It's $30 a bag, and you pour it in just like water. But here's the challenge, and this is why this video can help you, is you think, okay, I'm going to lift this slab 1.5, 2 inches to eliminate this trip hazard. What we found after we had the slab lifted is we had a 6-inch cavity now between the slab and the base. And so I don't know why, but I went ahead and poured 3 bags of that concrete leveling cement in there. And that was foolish, because this is just like taking a garden hose and pouring a garden hose in there. I mean, if you have 65 square feet and, you have 6-inch cavity, you could say that you have massive amounts of cubic feet in there, 32 cubic feet that you have to fill. So then we said, okay, let's go ahead and drill some more holes. And we don't know what else to do but to grab some regular Quikrete, bags of concrete. And we used a spade inside a 5-gallon bucket and mixed it up. I wouldn't say very, very soupy, but it wasn't dry. And then we used a funnel. You'd say, well, what kind of funnel do you have for 3 or 6-inch holes? We just found a windshield washer bucket of fluid, cut the top off of it, and used that as our funnel. And so we started pouring bags of concrete through these holes, trying to make some type of pedestals that we could use that could help support this concrete. And so we used then some pry bars to shove that concrete as far as we possibly could, get as much as we could through those additional holes of cavities that we could to help support it. And then when we went to Home Depot to buy all this different material, we had also mathematically tried to compute just how many cans of that 3-inch expandifoam we should try to use. And we thought if it was going to be 100% supported by the foam, we were thinking we may need 78, 80 cans of that foam, they're $5 or $6 a can. So we were kind of really struggling at the last minute just to rush back to try to get this done before it got too late. And we walked out of there with, 48 cans of this expandifoam. And I forgot, we ended up getting 8 bags of regular concrete. We had 6 bags of that self-leveling concrete, and I only used 3. So after shoving in as many bags of concrete into these additional holes that were used to trying to create a base under this slab, then we started, adding foam. So we took the foam can over to the drill bit section and tried to get an idea just what size of drill bit we want. We ended up getting just a little bit larger drill bit for the foam nozzle, and we got a 1/4-inch bit, I believe. And we did not drill too many holes. holes. We just drilled, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 at the most. And we tried to stay quite a ways away from the actual jack cavities. And so put 22 cans of this 3-inch Expand-A-Foam in there. And honestly, that seemed like a fraction based on the amount of cubic feet we were estimating. Because I think on the can it said that it has about 0.2 to 0.4 cubic feet in one can. And, we're thinking we have maybe 32 cubic feet of a cavity. But after pushing in that concrete in those holes and adding as much of that 22 cans of foam, then we left it overnight. And when we come back the next day, you can see right here, we're taking the tension off. This is the big test. After the tension is taken off, you can see the chains are now loose, and it was very, very pleasing to us to find out that the slab stayed up. And same here, we were taking the tension off, and the slab stayed up. And you can see it's not very easy to get the tension off of these jacks when they're down inside this restricted cavity. So we're just trying to see if we can get the tension off here, get it loose, and you can see it's not easy to actually do. Now I think you'll start to see this. Yeah, now you can see that the chains are loose in this case. So now what kind of surprised us was, as far away as we were from those jacks when we were putting in that foam, that night the foam was nowhere close to the jacks. And we actually used a borescope, and we shoved a borescope under there to see where the foam was. And we could see the foam was expanding. We're like, okay, this is good. And of course, on that other video, I don't know, in some of the videos people talk about, definitely have safety glasses on. This stuff could really harm you, right? So, much to our surprise, the next day, this foam got into each of the jacking holes. And so now we're going to remove the jacks, and I want to show you some of the bent bolts that were a result of these 3/8 bolts that we had for all of our lifting purposes there. So now we're trying to, put more concrete into these cavities because we want more of a pedestal for those 2 cavities as well. So now we're having to tear foam out just to actually be able to shove more concrete down through those holes. And these are the bigger holes. So these are the 6-inch holes. The other holes that we created were just the 3 3/4 holes. And that one bit that I showed you earlier, it doesn't have a starting center bit. And so you have to hold it at a kind of a 30-degree angle just to score an edge, just to try to get it started. And so the smaller hole was more challenging. I guess I'll tell you at the very beginning on those bits, one of those bits was designed for cutting through rebar. So this one on the right is cutting through rebar, and it is not designed as a hammer. They say not to hammer, otherwise you'll break it. If it's some type of a diamond bit. It was another cheap Amazon bit, but this one is designed to hammer. However, it's not designed for rebar. And so you're going to have to make decisions on what type of bit you want. And we hit rebar many times when we were actually going through this process. And we did not cut the rebar. We just worked around the rebar inside of these holes. So actually you can see the rebar right here in this hole here. This rebar is where we got into it on that particular case. So after we cleaned out the holes and got more of the foam out of the way, then we mixed up more concrete, just ready mix, shoved it down in there, tried to trowel it off, and much to our surprise, it stayed lifted. And so you could say, hey, why don't we just go ahead and just remove all the concrete and we pour it? Well, one, we were worried about bringing the concrete truck up there and the concrete truck just destroying the existing driveway because we don't know what kind of cavity is underneath the driveway. And then we did get an estimate on what it would take if we took all the concrete out and just had somebody finish the porch and finish a small section of the sidewalk. That was every bit of $900, and we're not finished concrete folks. And so we thought, okay, let's just see if we can remove the tripping hazard from the porch initially. And so it's probably about $350 worth of tools that we bought compared to what tools we already had in supplies. I'd say we definitely wasted $100 on that concrete self-leveling solution, but I mean, we were just kind of doing this by trial and error. So what I recommend, if you are trying to lift one of these slabs, pretty well plan on you having a larger cavity underneath than what you're anticipating. And they say, if you have foam, that sunlight and water will break that foam down. I don't know if it's, it depends on if it's closed cell foam or not. But we weren't too worried about water here, but we definitely want to get as much concrete under there as possible. I guess if you want to be absolute perfect, it'd be good to have just several holes to shove as much concrete under there as you can. Some people use a reciprocating saw with the blade off to hit on top of the concrete slab to try to vibrate that concrete in there. But overall, we're glad it's over and that we were able to remove the tripping hazard at the edge of the step.